The governor told reporters education, health care, and public safety will be her priorities when the legislative session begins February 2nd. I spoke with eCapitol News Director Shawn Ashley about what to expect at the Capitol. Shawn, one of the takeaways from this week's AP Legislative Forum was that budget cuts can be expected for most, if not all, state agencies.
Yes, we heard that during the AP Legislative Forum, where the governor, as well as other legislative leaders, including Senate Democratic Minority Leader Randy Bass, talked about that possibility. In fact, Randy Bass went so far as to say that, in fact, they would be. At the Oklahoma Policy Institute meeting on Thursday, John Estes from the Office of Management and Enterprise Services went even further and said practically every agency should expect a budget cut except for education. So it seems very likely, given the fact that already we're looking at a $300 million difference in money available for the upcoming fiscal year versus the current fiscal year, that there will pretty much be across the board cuts, or every agency will receive a cut. The question is, how big will each agency's cut be?
And one of the methods that legislators are likely to use to try to figure out this budget conundrum is by tapping into revolving funds. What are they and how would that operate?
Revolving funds are interesting animals. Every agency seems to have one or more revolving funds, and oftentimes these funds receive their money from special fees that they charge if you're obtaining a license, for example, from the Medical Licensure and Supervision Board. That money goes into a revolving fund. In some cases, our tax money is slid aside and placed in a revolving fund for a particular agency. According to Governor Fallin, the Office of Management and Enterprise Services has done a review and found about $1.7 billion are currently in agency revolving funds across the state. Now, some of that money can't be used today because it's been dedicated to very specific purposes. It's been encumbered. She said when you take that amount away, you're looking at about $900 million that's out there and could be used. However, the Attorney General twice this past year ruled that the state has to be very, very careful in dealing with these because some of that money is dedicated to specific purposes. Not that it's been encumbered, but that it was intended to provide a specific service, and you can't divert that money away from that service. So they'll have to be careful in trying to figure out how much of that money they can use.
Oklahoma City State Representative Sally Kern has again made national news with some of her proposed legislation, and one of the bills she has said she has withdrawn. How does that operate?
Well, House Bill 1597 was the bill which would have allowed businesses to discriminate against members of the LGBT community. She announced on Thursday that she was withdrawing that bill. Quite simply, what that means is that she will not allow that bill to be considered. But the House does not have a procedure for really pulling a bill back. So what this means is the bill is still there, and it still technically could be heard at any time, but she's not going to allow that to happen. The bill will carry over to next year. She did say that the bill does not do exactly what she wanted it to do, so perhaps she'll be involved in an effort to look at new language, to perhaps amend it next year, or add it to some other legislation this year.
And the legislative session begins on Monday with the governor's State of the State address. You and I will be here providing that coverage. Shawn Ashley, eCapitol News Director, thank you.
You're very welcome.
We'll see you Monday.